What happens when a government pushes people too far? No more listening, no more compromise, no more patience. In 1776, 13 American colonies made a decision that would change history forever. They officially broke away from Great Britain. The result was one of the most famous documents ever written, the Declaration of Independence. Today on 10-Minute Mentor, we're breaking down why it was written, who wrote it, what it says, and why it's still one of the most important documents students learn about today. So whether you're studying for a test, reviewing for class, or just curious about American history, you've come to the right place. Here's the Declaration of Independence in under 10 minutes by 10-Minute Mentor. Before there was a United States, there were 13 British colonies along the eastern coast of North America. These colonies were controlled by Great Britain and ruled by King George III. For many years, things were relatively stable. Then came the French and Indian War, which ended in 1763. Britain won the war, but there was just one small problem. Wars are expensive. Very expensive. Britain ended up with a huge amount of debt. And like many governments throughout history, their solution was basically, who can help pay for this? And the answer? The colonies. Britain began passing new taxes, including the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, the Townshend Act, the Tea Act. The colonists were not thrilled. Their main complaint was that they had no representatives in the British Parliament. In other words, they were being taxed by a government where they had no voice. This led to their famous phrase, no taxation without representation. Imagine helping buying a video game and not getting a turn to play. That's how many colonists felt. As tension grew, protests became more common. In 1770, the Boston Massacre increased in anti-British feelings throughout the colonies. Then in 1773 came the Boston Tea Party. And despite the name, this was not a fancy tea party with tiny sandwiches. Colonists boarded British ships and dumped 342 chests of teas into British Harbor to protest British policies. Britain responded with harsh laws known as the Intolerable Acts. Instead of calming things down, these laws made many colonists even angrier. Colonial leaders began meeting in gatherings called the Continental Congresses. By April 1775, fighting had already broken out at Lexington and Concord, making the beginning of the American Revolutionary War. But even though the war had started, the colonies still have not officially declared independence. That was about to change. In June 1776, the Second Continental Congress met in Philadelphia. Many delegates now believe complete independence was the only solution. A committee of 5 men was chosen to create a declaration explaining why the colonies were separating from Britain. The committee includes Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, Robert R. Livingston. Thomas Jefferson of Virginia was selected to write most of the document. Jefferson was heavily influenced by Enlightenment ideas, especially those of philosopher John Locke. Locke believed people are born with natural rights and that governments exist to protect those rights. These ideas would become the foundation of the Declaration. Jefferson wrote a draft, the committee reviewed it, Congress edited it, and after plenty of debate, because no committee in history has ever looked at a draft and said, perfect, no changes needed, the final version was approved. On July 4th, 1776, the Continental Congress officially adopted the Declaration of Independence. That's why Americans celebrate Independence Day every July 4th. The Declaration could be divided into 4 major sections. Let's break them down. The Declaration begins by explaining that when a person chooses to separate from another nation, they should explain their reasons. Basically, if we're ending this relationship, we should probably explain why. This is the most famous section. It begins with the words, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." Then comes one of the most quoted lines in history, that all men are created equal. The Declaration states that people are born with certain unalienable rights, meaning rights that cannot simply be taken away. These rights include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. According to Jefferson, governments are created to protect these rights. And here's the revolutionary idea. Governments get their power from the consent of the governed, the people, not from a king, not from a royal family, the people. The Declaration also says that if a government repeatedly violates people's rights, the people have the right to alter or abolish that government and create a new one. In 1776, that idea was shocking. It's basically telling one of the most powerful kings in the world, your authority exists because people allow it, not the other way around. Next comes the longest section of the document. And honestly, it's history's most famous one-star review. Jefferson lists more than 24 complaints against King George III. Some major grievances include refusing to approve important laws, dissolving colonial legislators, interfering with self-government, keeping standing armies in the colonies during peacetime, taxing colonists without their consent, limiting trial by jury, restricting trade, forcing colonists to house British soldiers, using military force to enforce unpopular policies. From the colonists' perspective, every time they raised concern, King George III seemed unwilling to listen or respond to their complaints. The purpose of this section was to show that independence wasn't a rash decision. The colonists believed they had repeatedly tried to fix their relationship with Britain and had been ignored. Finally, the colonies make their official announcement. They declare themselves free and independent states. This meant they no longer recognized British authority. They claimed the powers of an independent nation, including the abilities to make laws, conduct trade, form alliances, declare war, and make peace. At this point, there was no going back. The colonies weren't just unfollowing Britain, they were ending the relationship entirely. Many people assume everyone signed the Declaration on July 4th. Actually, most signatures were added later. In total, 56 delegates signed the document. Some famous signers included John Hancock, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Samuel Adams. Signing the Declaration was extremely risky. If Britain won the war, the signers would have been considered traitors. That meant possible imprisonment, or worse. These men were risking their lives, property, and reputation. One signer became especially famous, John Hancock. His signature was written so large and boldly that it became legendary. Today, people sometimes say, put your John Hancock on it, when they mean sign your name. If signature had a volume button, John Hancock was set to maximum. Now here's an important test question. The Declaration of Independence did not create the United States government. Many students mix this up. The Declaration announced independence. The Articles of Confederation and later the United States Constitution created the framework of government. Another important point, the Declaration stated that all people are created equal. However, equality was not fully applied in practice. Enslaved people remained enslaved. Women could not vote. Many groups were denied equal rights. Over time, however, the Declaration principles inspired movements for abolition, civil rights, voting rights, and equality. Its ideas spread around the world and influenced democratic movements far beyond the United States. Today, these principles continue to shape discussions about freedom, rights, and government. If your teacher puts the Declaration of Independence on a test, these are the facts that will make you an expert on the topic. It was adopted on July 4, 1776. It was primarily written by Thomas Jefferson, approved by the Second Continental Congress. It was influenced by Enlightenment ideas and philosopher John Locke, declares the natural right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Governments receive power from the consent of the governed. People can alter or abolish governments that violate their rights. Lists grievances against King George III. declares the 13 colonies independent from Great Britain, and it announces the independence but does not create the U.S. government. And that's the Declaration of Independence explained in under 10 minutes. If this video helped you learn something new or prepare for an upcoming test, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe to 10-Minute Mentor for more history, literature, science, and math videos. Until next time with quick lessons and big ideas. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.